What's up, guys? Today we got a very special guest in the building. We got the homie Crook MSG. Now, why don't you let the people know who you are, man?
Well, I'm just a regular dude that has an interesting story. Um, a lot of people know of me because of the graffiti shit. Um, but that was really a long time ago, so it's kind of not really who I am today. But that's how most people know me. Getting famously arrested on the news back in '99, and you know, a lot of things have happened since then. But that's where most people kind of start. you know.
So, where are you from?
From Miami, South Florida. I don't like to just claim Miami because I was born in Broward. So Broward and Dade, South Florida really is my home.
How long were you in Broward for?
Well, I was born there and grew up in Miami up until I was in second grade in Kendall, and then moved to North Miami until I was in seventh grade, and then we moved to Broward. But my mom was working in Broward when she was pregnant with me, working at Broward General. So, for me, some people are 305, 954. I'm South Florida. Yeah, I don't see that shit. You
For
know.
sure. And so, like, at what age would you say you started getting into like the whole graffiti scene and stuff like that?
Well, in high school, I think I just got into hip hop in general. And for me, my way into hip hop was uh, music first. Listening to hip hop and, getting turntables and attempting to live like the DJ life, even though I didn't really know what I was doing. This was like out of the back of the Source magazine, your first, turntable
So,
mixer combo.
so DJing something you kind of already done in the past, kind.
Yeah,
Okay.
DJ was the first, like, if you want to say what I do within hip hop, that was my first love. I just wanted to make mixtapes, really. The mixtapes were huge back then, and um, Tony Touch and Mr. C and Who Kid and Lazy K and, all the really dope, ill mixtape DJs back then that were beat juggling and doing remixes and scratching and shit. That was my first love with hip hop, but it's expensive. You got to be really dedicated to it, and you kind of really do need someone to show you the way. Especially back then, if it'd be different if you was like in New York and you have all these different people that are in it.
Yeah.
But I was in Pembroke Pines trying to figure out how to DJ. I had like one friend that was into it as much as me, and it was like the blind leading the blind. But it was fun having some turntables and buying records and doing that kind of shit. But that was like, you kind of like need to be like a nerd to really be good at that, because you just need to be in your room practicing, doing shit in the dark, so that when it's your time to shine, you're on point. And I don't think I ever really had like the patience for that. Like, I wanted to be in the streets. I wanted to be outside. So when graffiti came along, the DJing was like, it's cool, like parties and stuff, to like bust out the turntables and do that kind of shit. But graffiti was like an element of hip hop that really anybody can get into. Like, to DJ, you would need turntables, mixer, records, speakers, amp, a space to have all that shit, and then a lot of time to dedicate and money to acquire a record collection and learning how to match beats and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's a lot of dedication, a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of resources that you need to do that. With graffiti, it's like I could walk into Home Depot, stick a can of spray paint in my pocket, in my pants, and I can go out on I-95 right now, climb a highway sign, write my name on there, and the next morning when the sun comes up and everyone's going to work, it's like, oh shit, look at Crook, this is crazy. So it's something that, like, you can just directly insert yourself into right now. You can be a toy on the street. You just come up with a nickname, get you a can of spray paint, and you can get in the game right now. You know, you might be whack, you know, you might be terrible, but like there's not much stopping you from like being a part of that shit. And when you start off, you think no one is seeing what you're doing. You kind of feel like it's, you know, you see what everyone else is doing and you want to be part of that, and you're doing all this shit thinking that no one sees it. And then when you really start getting around these people, you realize they see everything. Every whack thing you've ever done, they're watching you, you know. So it's just, I think that's really what it was. Like my true passion was DJing and music, but I didn't have the money or the patience or the guidance, you know, someone else that was like that could school me up in that regard. Where when I got into graffiti, just my own personal tenacity with it when I first started out attracted the attention of the people who were already established. So, and that's the way it goes in graffiti. You know, you have like an established crew, and you know, it's just like a young prospect in baseball or basketball or something. Like, yo, I want to draft this dude. I see him out there doing his thing. So you attract the attention of these more established people, and then if you can pile up with the right crews and get down with them, then they're going to share that knowledge with you. So for me, I didn't really have that path with DJing. Like I pursued it, but didn't have enough money or enough patience, and was on the outside in the streets, you know, not in my room and fucking at record stores all the time. So when graffiti took over, it was like boom. And then right away, you know, shit happened quick for me. I went from being like a toy that no one ever heard of, that was just doing exactly what I said, stealing paint and just going out there and putting my name out there, and started to meet new friends, you know, started putting me in places that I normally would have never been if it wasn't for the fact that I was like linking with other homies and going to different areas of the city, up in Broward, down in Miami. And you know, it just was something that like sucked me in. So it started with the music and the hip hop, but as soon as graffiti came into my life and I was excelling and all these things were happening, instead of just like being in my room like chicka, chicka, you know, trying to make, hey, please listen to my tape, you know, to my 3 friends that gave a fuck, you know, versus like now I'm scribbling my name on the high when we go to a party and say, yo, this is my boy Crook right here, to like shorties and shit, and they'd be like, oh, you know, and it's like, wow, damn, I'm actually like getting some pussy off this. This is incredible. Like, this is crazy. I'm not even good, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just out there acting silly, and you know, it's a game that like people can get into right away. Anyone can get a marker, a can of spray paint, and even if you suck, you will attract more attention if you suck. Almost, it's like, yo, who's this dude? Who's
Yeah.
this guy all over the place doing this whack shit? You know, so it's just like graffiti's easier to get into and way more addictive, and just it can consume you, where I think DJing has to truly be a passion that you're willing to sacrifice a lot of time and money and resources to actually be, you know. Well, that's why like I'm more successful now, because I'm a grown ass man, and you know, now I do have that discipline, and I do
Yeah.
have the ability to, you know, purchase the equipment and store it, and I enjoy that time alone now. I don't want to be outside. I want to be inside now. You know, to me, the idea of like going out and doing graffiti illegally and all that stuff is kind of like a big turnoff to me. I would much rather smoke a joint and just put the turntables on and vibe out. You know, I would enjoy that much more at this point in my life. So, you
That
know,
makes sense. Not. Do you remember like the first time ever doing graffiti? What
yeah,
that was like?
yeah, absolutely. I remember not really knowing too much about how to actually do it. I had some friends in high school that were pretty good, and I mean, I didn't even know about like putting a different cap on the shit. One of my boys, like, I went out the first time, like, just to, I mean,
So that was even a thing back then. The
oh
whole.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, back then it was a little different. It was more, instead of, I mean, you could go to a graffiti store and like buy a New York fat cap, you know, but also it was like, all right, when you go, let's say like Kmart or Walmart or some shit, you're gonna go steal some cans, or even if you were buying them, you would go around to the other spray products and see what caps they have on. They used to have Elmer's glue in the like crafts department, and they would have these like orange dot like fat caps that worked really good on rustos. So, you know, we would go in there and we would pop open the thing and take every cap off of all those, and you know, so yeah, that was always a thing. And plus anything that was like, if you could steal it versus buying it, you know,
Yeah.
it was easier. And there was only a handful of places that actually like catered to a graffiti writer in the 90s.
That's what I was gonna say. In the
Yeah.
90s, we had graffiti shops downtown.
Yeah. The one I used to go to was called The Point, and it was out in like out west. I think it was on Coral Way and like 100 and something. It was pretty far out there, and it was dope. I remember the first time going there, I was a complete toy, and like someone just told me like, "Yo, go to Checkpoint over here at this spot. Like, go in there and like they'll hook you up." And I remember going in there and being like straight toy and being like, "Yeah, like I want to get some caps and like some graph magazines, and like I want like a graffiti video. Like I wanted a graffiti video, some shit that I had seen." And the dude that was there, I don't know who it was, um, whoever it was, God bless him, because he did the right thing. He gave me Style Wars. He was like, "Oh, you're a fucking toy." He didn't say that. He's like,
Yeah.
"This fucking dumbass. Like, let me give him this. Let me give him some education. If you don't know shit about graffiti, you can watch Style Wars. In an hour and a half, you're gonna get a sense of like the history behind where this culture came from and how it got to where it is." It's a really dope documentary. So I remember that being my first trip to a graffiti store to purchase caps and start to pursue this like graffiti shit that I didn't know much about, but I really liked it, and it was a lot of fun. And you know, I was heavy into sports, still am, you know, so I have like a competitive nature, and that element of graffiti is very much a sport. You know what I'm saying? It's like a competition, and it's not all based on like artistic skills. It's like a balance between artistic skills and balls,
Yeah.
and how much dedication and just how crazy you are with it, you know? So, you know, I think that's why I took to the aspect of like bombing and getting up and competing. And then right away, I went from being the biggest toy in the city to being tag team duo with the best writer in the city. So that was a hell of a transition, you know, but I caught the attention of these guys, and I was from their area. I was very heavy influenced by them. I actually went to the same school as Chrome. Even though like he dropped out, but like what I'm trying to say is that we lived in the same area.
Yeah.
So everything he did, it was probably maybe more impactful to me, because maybe if you lived in another area, you might have known about him and seen him up. But for me, I lived like very close to where he lived, went to the same school. So to me, it was like on all levels, like scratched into the register at Taco Bell, at the post office, at the DMV, in a magazine, on the mural on the side of the highway, on the highway signs, stickers, labels, you know, all these different things, which at the time, to see someone in a magazine in the 90s was
Yeah, no, it's a whole
it was
different
incredible.
time, yeah.
And to see someone on the internet on the 90s, there was a website called Art Crimes. It was like the original kind of like graffiti website. And they had like this section called City Walls, and they would highlight a city. So there'd be like Miami, and you click on there and it would show you like a couple different writers from Miami. And a lot of it was like MSG. And that was like kind of my first connection from like the streets to the internet
Yeah.
and magazines. If you were just like a graffiti writer who you saw in the streets is one thing, but if you saw him in the streets and he was in 12-ounce Profit and he was on Art Crimes, I mean, that was like impressive at the time, you know, for someone to have that kind of like exposure. And so it just had a lot of influence on me, you know, like MSG and Chrome and all those homies, they had a really big impact on me because that was the area where I was from. So I literally saw everything they did. Where if you grew up in Kendall, Chrome might not have been your favorite graffiti writer. You know what I'm saying? You might have been more into like a homie that was made his mark in that area more. You know, since I grew up at that time in my high school years was in Broward, you know, in Miramar and Cooper City and Pembroke Pines, in that area. Chrome he was everywhere, but in that area it was more like on all levels.
Yeah.
Or maybe if you went to this city or this city, you ain't gonna see him up like in every little spot. But where I was at, it was like overwhelming. He was all over the place. He was on the gas pump. He was in the fucking store. He was on a sticker here. He was on top of the highway sign. He was on a billboard. He was did this shit over here, did that, and it was just like, yo, this dude is like a urban legend. You know, the people used to be like, oh, you know Chrome? I know Chrome, and they explain what he looks like and this and that, and so you know that shit was. I think more impressive in those times. You know, you didn't have the internet where you see everything happening in the whole world. It was just kind of like what was popping in our city. And then when you saw them on these other platforms like magazines and websites and all that stuff, it gained their stature. Maybe the same way if you went on someone's page now and they had 2 million followers, you might be like, oh, wow. It would impress you. Maybe like a similar feeling to that, you know, like, wow, this guy's official. Where if you went on someone's page and he has like 7,000 followers, you'd be like, all right, cool, he's doing his thing, you know, but it's not a big deal. That's how many I have, you know, it's not a big deal. If you went on my page and I had a fucking 1.2 milli, you'd be like, yo, who is this dude? He's killing it right now, you know? So that was the impression that you got when you were writers that were on that level. You know, and it was all favoritism and shit. Lots of those kinds of things. Some people were left out. Some people were included. But Chrome was one of the real ones that he was in there because of his skills and really just like his creativity. You know, I think he's one of the best graffiti writers South Florida has ever seen. Maybe not the best. Depends on where you're from and what area you grew up in and all that kind of shit. But it's kind of hard to deny him from at least top 3, like undeniably. You know,
that's for sure. So. What's the time frame from like when you said like toy Crook to dynamic duo Crook? How fast did that come about?
Well, I mean, what you got to understand is that didn't like dramatically change. Just because I was with Chrome, I might have learned how to execute the act of graffiti better, as far as, you know, parking here and approaching it this way and kind of the way that we went about getting to the spots and executing them without getting in trouble and working together as a team. But I didn't just magically get good at graffiti. What I did was I was showing all that drive and tenacity, and then someone else saw that and was like, yo, like I just really wanted to paint with him. He didn't have the ability to drive at the time. Like he had gotten in trouble, lost his license and shit. So and I think he had worn out his welcome with a lot of his friends just from all the craziness that they had been through. And not a lot of people were willing to just fuck their lives up to go out and pursue this kind of shit. Yeah. But Chrome's one of the ones that, like, it's real with him, you know, like it's 100% like authentic. And I came with that new energy, you know what I'm saying? Like hungry to prove some shit. I didn't know that I was going to link up with that dude. That's like if you went up to the park and LeBron was up there and was like, yo, you want to run? You'd be like, me? Okay. You know, that's what it felt like, you know. Next thing you know, I'm rolling with, you know, a heavy hitter, and I understood how to like play my role. And if me and Chrome stepped to a spot, he wasn't going to let me come out whack and my shit look terrible next to his. So, I mean, lots of times I was the one jumping out doing quick tags and stuff, but when we're hitting nice spots, you know, he wants his shit to match mine. Our tags are so similar, so you know he did a lot of that stuff. I can't take credit for a lot of that. I had only been in the game for a short period of time, and by the time I was just starting to figure things out and get pretty decent, I got arrested. So you know, my run with Chrome, people think it's like a very long time, but it was, I want to say, about 4 months from the time that we first painted to the day I got arrested. It was like November of 98 to March 10th, 99. You know, November we started chilling and I think painted for the first time. I don't know exactly. I've been trying to recall, but it was like late 98 where we linked up and started painting, and it all went down on March 10th, 1999. But you got to understand, it was like crackhead style. Yeah. Every night. 5, 6, 7 nights a week that we would go out, and you know, it was just a perfect storm of someone who was really good at graffiti and really had put in a lot of work. He was really good, and I was very trusting of him because he's Chrome. Like, whatever you say goes. Like, so it was just like he just would point and I would be like, all right, let's go. You know what I'm saying? Like full trust. And we would just go out and paint all night, and we never did anything too crazy. It was all just pretty simple, in your face, real bold, and it had a name that sounded like a fucking company or something. Crook and Chrome. That's just on like a club or a bar or something. It just has that kind of ring to it. And even Crook and Chrome, it wasn't Chrome and Crook. It was Crook and Chrome. It just kind of rolled off the tongue more.
Yeah, I know. Like in the news reports, they would always be like Crook Chrome.
Sometimes they would say Chrome and Crook, but it just literally sounds better to say Crook and Chrome. Like even if you ask Chrome, he would probably say it. It just kind of does roll off the tongue better. So I went from this like complete toy that didn't know what the hell he was doing, just was hyped off of it and thought it was fun, to rolling with this dude, and now he's painting my name and I'm looking like I'm as good as him. We got these like matching fucking names and shit. We even were dating sisters at the time. It was kind of ridiculous. Yeah, like I was like dating this chick, and then I introduced him to his sister. So we were like living together, painting together, and dating sisters for that whole run. So that's why we were together nonstop, bro. From bombing all night to going hanging with these chicks, and just that's why it was only 4 months, but people are always like, really? But that's because we came out of nowhere and just blew up real fast, and we were strategic about what we were doing. And the news caught on to it. If the news didn't catch on to it, we wouldn't talk about it the same way. You might be like, I remember Crook and Chrome when they went crazy for a couple months. End of story.
Yeah.
That's it. There's a lot of graffiti writers that have done more, but it's maybe more spaced out over time, or it just doesn't catch on. There was something about the way we were doing things. We were very strategic, and we were hitting like all the entrance ramps and exit ramps, and we were literally like targeting areas. Like if you were going to go to South Beach, we're going to hit all the entrances and exits out so that you just kind of can't miss it. If you went to South Beach, guarantee you saw some of our shit. Maybe one nice spot, and then some tags sprinkled in, some like quick shit. But like if you went to South Beach, you saw us. If you went to Kendall, you saw us. If you got on 95, 826, 836, 595, Turnpike, whatever, you saw us. We made sure that like literally the prosecutor says, he says, Your Honor, literally you cannot go anywhere in South Florida without seeing their tags. And he was right. Now we weren't everywhere, but you couldn't go anywhere without us having some presence from Broward all the way down to South Miami, for a short period of time. Every graffiti writer goes out and they put in a lot of work, and then the buff comes in and buildings get tore down and things happen and your shit just fades away unless you're on it. We were on it like crackheads for 4 months. The news caught on to it. So when the news caught on, it was like, hey, there's this Crook and Chrome shit everywhere. So to the average person that didn't know what the fuck it was, didn't give a fuck. It's like if something happened out here on your street, a crazy accident, and you saw it on the news, you'd be like, I seen that shit.
Yeah.
So you have a connection to it, like a personal connection. So if they're like Crook and Chrome, you're like Crook and Chrome. And then you drive and go, oh, Crook and Chrome. Even if it was just one tag that you saw, you're going to remember that I saw that on the news and I heard that they're crazy and they have a big tag right next to my house. And for that little, like that fence that they tagged, I saw that fence every day. And then in people's minds, it kind of grows to something a little bigger, back when the power of the local media, the news and all stuff was very powerful. Where now, it's people like myself,
the internet and shit.
Yeah, I look at my phone. I can't tell you the last time I put the fucking news on. So it's a different world back then, and now I don't think we would have nearly the impact unless, like, I don't know. I think we could do the same exact thing today, and it would just wouldn't even make the news.
I mean, it's a completely different world we're living in.
It's
now.
different.
Like way different world.
It's not as impressive now, but back then we just did something at a time that.
And graffiti was not as acceptable.
Well, the attitude towards graffiti was completely different, So at that time, this is 1998. Wynwood was not an arts district. Art Basel hadn't came to Wynwood or to South to Miami Beach yet. So, Wynwood had a lot of graffiti. Wynwood has a little history with that. Had a lot of dope jams back in the days, and some really classic walls got painted in that neighborhood. But that wasn't anything close to what the Wynwood that we know of today, you know. So the attitude towards graffiti back then was like eradicate it, like stop it, because it's like an eyesore to this beautiful tourist destination. You don't want tourists coming in and then all the highway signs and all the highway walls have scribble and graffiti all over the place. It makes it feel like they don't have control of the city, or the city is run down or scary or whatever. You want it to be pretty to attract tourists to come down here and go to the beaches and spend mad money. So once they, I don't know exactly how it happened, over a couple of years of Basel coming and changing that neighborhood into a true arts district, and some people coming in and giving people chances and open galleries, turned it into what it is today. But the attitude towards graffiti was eradicate it, fine it on people's buildings, like fine them, make them jump through hoops to get permission to paint murals and stuff. And that, it seems crazy now when you go down there. The city just stopped trying to fight it, started to embrace it, and realized that this is a tourist attraction. This is something that's going to bring people to the area, and it's going to, I mean, they turned an area that was pretty. I mean, I remember in '98 when I worked in the area, I was a delivery boy for a little bagel shop. So I used to go in all these little areas. And I mean, that area of Wynwood, where the Wynwood that we know now, not the neighborhood section with all the houses, but in like the,
Yeah, like
where
that
Wynwood
warehouse
walls, yeah,
district-ish
in that
type shit.
area, that shit was nothing but like crackheads and prostitutes, and looked like motherfucking people from Thriller walking around, like zombie looking motherfuckers. Like it was, and then you'd go to this building that would like have no windows, and you have no idea what it is. And I'd go in there to deliver some shit. There's a full company in there. Like it was weird, because shit was so cheap back then, but none of those buildings had windows or anything. And it was just like a strange place that was actually primed for what it became, a bunch of buildings with no windows that were just warehouses in an area where no one really gave a fuck. If you were painting even something kind of cool, painting some colors on their drab ass building, they would like it. I mean, we used to go with like magazines of shit that we didn't even paint and be like, yeah, we did this, and lie to them so that they could, just to, like, we'd show them some of our stuff and then show them shit that we didn't even do, just so they'd be like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And that area was prime time because it's so close to the highway that it was, a lot of those walls, the backs of those buildings were prime time, you know? So graffiti writers were already targeting that area because of its proximity to 395 and I-95. So anything that was along 195, I-95 and 395 that faced the highway, that was prime real estate.
Right? Is that basically how MSG came about?
No, not at all.
So how did
Not at all.
MSG become a thing?
MSG became a thing because Chrome and Siege and some other homies, they originally had a different crew. It was called FE, Fuck Everyone. And apparently there was like another crew that used to run with that name, and people were kind of getting pissed about it, and they were wanting to start something. And then Chrome's brother came up with the name MSG. Not exactly sure to all the details of exactly how it came up.
Now, did he do graffiti? Because I know he's on a whole
Nah, he
different
didn't.
professional venture.
Yeah, he's like a graphic artist, and Chrome's dad was an artist, and that's where they get their like artistic and business savvy. He's always been like around the crew and a part of the crew, but he's not a graffiti writer. Doesn't really, he's a lot of us just refer to him as Chrome's brother.
Yeah.
But he was the one that actually came up with the name and had a lot to do with the initial beginnings of MSG. But really, Chrome is like the face of it. He's the one that, if you say who's the originator of it, it's really Chrome. His brother might have came up with the letters, which are great. I think that's that was huge, you know, picking a name that just kind of everyone really enjoyed. Um, but yeah, way before Crook and Chrome, it was Chrome and Siege and a lot of other guys that started the movement that attracted people like myself to want to join and be a part of it, and looked up to it and thought it was cool and was a fan of MSG and Chrome. And um, that was like late 93, 94. And I didn't meet Chrome until 98. So there was like a whole
So
generation.
MSG is before Crook was a thing.
Absolutely,
Okay.
bro. I was in ninth grade, you know, when that crew was getting started. Eighth, ninth grade, I was on the basketball team. DJing,
So
graffiti wasn't something that I got into it. So I was like towards the end of high school. I was a
so
little bit of a late bloomer with it.
were you and Chrome in the same grade then? Because you said you guys went
He
to the
was
same
one
high
year,
school.
1 year older, 1 year above me.
So Chrome was doing this since middle school then.
Well,
If
yeah,
if
he
that's the
was. I
case.
mean, well, the thing is, you know, his dad was like, he painted boat signs. That was like his big hustle. He lived right on the intercoastal, and people would pull their yachts right up to his house, and he would paint their names. And he's a real business savvy guy and an artist, and he instilled that in his kids. And you know, Chrome and his brother are a lot different, but you know, they got a lot of influence from their father. And you know, Chrome's just a special talent, you know. It, he's not exactly the same person that he was a long time ago, but back then he was very much on a mission to be Chrome, you know, which was kind of like like a real ambitious thing back then, to like just create this character for yourself and figure out a way to hustle that, not have a job, but actually be Chrome and find a way to like just support yourself off that name and the shit that you do. So, you know, that was like the beginning of MSG, and there's a whole chapter prior to me coming along that
Gotcha.
like I wasn't there for, and I got to watch some of it, you know, secondhand, and was influenced by them and thought they were cool, and you know, knew all about it, you know. Um, so when I got into it, those were the people that I looked up to. There was a place close to where I lived called Agripost in Carroll City. It was like an abandoned warehouse where people would go and paint. And a lot of the things that you saw in the magazines and online, they were painting at places like this. So shit that I had seen in a magazine, or shit that I had seen online, which was a big deal in 98, 97 to see it online, to go into this abandoned warehouse in Carroll City, this scary building, and go in there and see these, like, oh shit, that's where this was. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh shit, I felt like I found like the fucking honeycomb hideout, you know. Once me and my friends started going there, we started meeting people. And you know, the MSGs had already been painting there for a long time, because Doper was he lived basically like right across the street. So he was the one that kind of set that place off and would bring people over to his hood and go in there and paint. By the time I came around, they already had the whole place painted, laced up, like well established. And, you know, it was already like a gallery of masterpiece burners. And MSG was like the crew. Each one of those places, they call them pennants.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bro, I
each one kind of like might be kind of dominated by a particular crew. Like, these guys always paint up here, this is their spot. And Agripost was very much like an MSG pennant. You went in there and they were the standout, you know, writers in there with the most work. And you know, so it just made sense for me to be like attracted to them. But I hopped on a moving train. A matter of fact, I feel like I kind of like MSG had this whole run, and there was like an era that kind of died when Bino passed away in '97. That was kind of like a chapter. The people who were there before that happened, and then the people who kind of came along after. I never even met Bino, so that was like, and I remember seeing that on the news, hearing about this graffiti writer that died, doing gold marlins on the Metro Mover. So I just remember seeing all that and knowing about it. And then I met someone in the crew that kind of pulled me in, and I met everyone at Agripost, and I got down with them. And, you know, Chrome was like the person I looked up to. So I linked up with him and we had the same vision, like to just, I was brand new to it and I wanted to just paint nonstop. And he was like in the middle of this long run that he had been on. And I was just like someone that like could keep the train moving. He was always that kind of person. He kind of needed like a sidekick, you know? Everyone knows about Crook and Chrome, but there's been so many Chrome and someone else, a lot, it's like definitely like a pattern where it's like he has all the talent and the creativity and kind of like knows what he wants to do, but just kind of needs someone with a little clearer head to kind of help get him there.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's the same. A lot of artists is like that. You
exactly.
Some artists need managers.
The rapper needs the producer and the engineer and a manager and a fucking AR and all these things so that they could just be an artist.
Because your job is to be the artist.
And come up with this content.
You and believe in you.
Exactly. Like I'll take care of the minutia so that you could focus on your shit. And it kind of was like that. You know what I'm saying? Where like this dude is like, he's got the ideas, he's got the talent. If you can kind of work with him, and that's what our crew was all about. MSG is all about working together to do something greater than what you would be like doing on your own. And that's what attracted all these different artists to be a part of these large scale walls and themed out murals and doing creative things, not just your standard pieces and b-boys and just like, which is dope and fresh, but like MSG was always like, pick a concept and like let's build a whole wall around it and like go all out with it. And we have the talent to do whatever we want. This guy can paint all the characters, this guy will do the pieces, this guy will come in and drop all the colors in the background, and it's just like a team of artists that came together. And I came along in this like second kind of chapter of MSG. The initial phase, the first couple years where they made their name, I was not a part of that. I was a fan of that, and that drew me to want to do graffiti amongst other things. But that's
a crazy turnaround.
Well, it is crazy. That's like I said before, like imagine if you're like, hey, I like basketball. Hey, let's go to the park down the street and then fucking Kobe's over there. And you're like, what up, Kobe? And Kobe's like, yo, you want to run on full court right now?
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't even know how to dribble, And it's like, fuck, come on. Like, I got you. Like just follow my lead. Set a pick, get in the way. So, I mean, that's the way my mentality was. Like, I had my local homies and people that were like halfway into it. I had friends that first time they got in trouble, bailed on it. Good for them. Good decision. But I was into it. I was a crackhead. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wanted that shit. So when Chrome met me and saw that, like, I got that same drive, we went on that little run. And like I said, he's done that with several people over time. And none of them have ever really had quite the impact that we did. I don't know why. I don't know why.
The Chrome era, bro. I could tell you coming from like where I grew up. That was a big era, man. That was
it was like the end of the 90s too. It was kind of like the end of an era. We were the last, like, like if you were doing a book or a timeline, you're talking about the 90s and graffiti and hip hop and Miami and stuff. The last part of the 90s story would be ending with Crook and Chrome's house getting raided and put all over the TV. Like it's like the end of the story for the 90s,
So you said that stint was like, it was like a 4-month run.
4-month like crack binge, basically.
Yeah. So
with no crack, we weren't doing crack. I'm saying like the graffiti was our crack. We were addicted to it, and just like the way a drug addict would go on a binge where it lasts for days or weeks or whatever. For us, it was just, we never got caught. We never, nothing got in the way. We just did whatever we wanted, and we were having fun, and we were out of control with it. And what happened was Channel 10 was right down the street from where we lived. And Channel 10 was the one that did the initial story, like, who is Crook and Chrome? And that's what kind of made all the other media jump on.
So were you in high school while all this was happening? Because you were saying
I was just out of high school.
Just out of high school?
I graduated in 97. So from 97 to 98 was like my rookie year.
Okay.
When I was a toy and had no idea what I was doing. But I was making noise because I was linking up with different people. I was attempting to like do good shit. I was putting forth the effort. Maybe the skills weren't necessarily there, but as a older writer, you can look at someone who maybe you might say they're a toy or they're whack, but you could be like, yo, this dude,
Yeah,
he's
respectable spots and doing
or
their
it's just
thing.
like when his skills catch up to his fucking tenacity, he's gonna be a problem, you know.
Yeah.
Or if he links up with someone who kind of make that growth happen much faster, or not even the growth, but be like, look, I got you. Like, roll with me, and you'll learn from me in the process. Now, I got a lot of credit because people put Crook and Chrome right here, even though it was like Chrome and Crook's driving. This is the reality of it. You know what I'm saying? But my name was right there with his, just as fresh as his most of the time. And people really, Crook and Chrome was kind of like Chrome's big, like, that was his moment. But I kind of piggybacked onto it and kind of maybe forced it to happen in
I
a
mean, the thing is,
different
your
way.
names was always right next to each other, so
Yeah, but the thing is, there was years where it was just Chrome. But what he built on his own, I, when me and him came together, I kind of inherited all that.
yeah, yeah.
It's kind of like if you joined a championship team, like when KD went to the Warriors. They already won a championship without him, but he came, and then it was just like bang, you know. And it's like, oh, so that's kind of like what happened with me. Like I joined a championship team, and I'm like Steve Kerr, bro. I hit like the game winner, but I wasn't the MVP. But at the end there, at the end of this crazy run, when it all blew up into a media sensation, I was the spark that I was the push that kind of pushed it over the edge, you know. And who knows, maybe that would have never happened, you know. But I was very determined, and he was like down for that. Like, it was just a perfect storm. And I think one of the biggest things is the fact that literally Channel 10 was right down the street.
Yeah.
So the things closest to our house where we lived, it was more saturated because we're there all the time. So it kind of builds up there. So every time we went off the highway, on the highway, all those areas and all along Biscayne and all that shit was fucking smashed. And like disrespectful shit, like palm trees and just, you know, because it was
Yeah.
so many nights that like the end of a crazy graffiti night where you've been painting all night and you're coming down Biscayne back to the house and hopping out, just doing crazy ass tags, all hyped up. And you know, the next day I remember like waking up sometimes and being like, oof, man, like we fucking smacked Biscayne up. Like this is gonna piss some people off.
Yeah.
We just hit like 20 palm trees. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
this is pissing people off. We're going wild with it, and we haven't had any resistance. We just got away with everything.
And I remember I seen a news report one time where it was like, I don't know if this was part of the binge era or not, but there was like, they were talking about you guys went all the way up to the Carolinas and stuff like that. They were
Well, no,
talking about this whole crazy.
Me and him never left Florida. We went from West Palm to like deep south, southwest Miami, and everywhere in between. The North Carolina shit that you're thinking of, which a lot of people do this, they kind of get their history a little mixed up. You know, it all kind of jumbles together unless you're really like in it. The North Carolina shit, I lived in North Carolina for a very short period of time, a little bit less than a year. And while I was there, I had a homie that lived in Atlanta, my boy Dose. And we were in pretty close proximity from Charlotte
Those
to
is from
Atlanta.
Atlanta?
He's not from Atlanta, but he moved up there.
Okay.
And he moved up there for whatever reason, I can't remember. And I moved up to North Carolina for some personal reasons, and we were friends from down south. So, you know, we would make the trip to come see each other. So I went to Atlanta, and Atlanta has graffiti everywhere. Atlanta is a graffiti playground. It's beautiful. There's old graffiti, like it's cool. It's very inspiring for a graffiti writer that's from a flat area like Miami to go there with all these old buildings and hills and just it's like a graffiti playground. And I think Dose fell in love with that, and he would take me out there and we would have fun. And then the North Carolina thing was a spot that I found that you're talking about where we made the news. There's like a 3-minute news clip where we hit this wild spot. It's a train bridge that goes over I-77 in Charlotte to to like the train yard, and it had like this pipe that ran along the side of it that you can get in between that and the pipe and paint it. You know, like normally you would be like shimmying like this, you wouldn't be able to do anything. But you could literally sit down with your feet on the edge of the bridge with your butt on a pipe and paint. So he came from Atlanta, and we painted a big ass Dose and Crook across this bridge in a city that wasn't ready for that. Like they freaked out. They did like a 3.5-minute story, like lead story of the news. Like, who is
you
this?
can even catch that on YouTube.
Literally, it's on YouTube. If you put Dose Crook Train Bridge, you'll see it. It's not the best like audio or video quality. It's really old, but you'll just see like North Carolina was like, what the fuck? And they knew what time it was. They were like, they're from Miami and they're moving up the East Coast. Is it a graffiti gang? Or and like they just.
So what year was this in?
They're like, they have targeted Charlotte and you're going to have to pay to clean it up. Next at 10, you know? It's like so good. It's like for a graffiti writer, that is like the ultimate prize to get that.
Oh, for sure.
They immortalize
especially
you.
In an era that's not the internet.
That's like immortalized. And I'm lucky enough that I caught the video on a shitty cell phone recording of the website.
So that video is yours.
Like the one on YouTube, I put it there. And, you know, it's not that crazy, but it's just like, it is kind of crazy if you know about the Crook and Chrome shit, because it's like, yeah, he made the news down there and that was wild. And we made the news in North Carolina. And the crazy shit about it is that Dose is so wild and he was so cracked out at the time on graffiti that day that we came out on the news in North Carolina for what we did, he came out on the news in Atlanta for some shit he did. Same day for these crazy highway signs that he did. So he was hot as fuck. He was like 2 different cities on the news. Like shit was crazy back then, you know? Like we were crazy and we did
what year was this in?
06. That was 06.
Oh, so this is the whole
or 05 or 06. 05, 06.
So this is
well after the Crook
at least
and Chrome.
A little over half a decade ago.
Yeah.
After the whole.
Well, the Crook and Chrome shit ended in 99 and that happened in like 06.
Yeah,
so I mean that was like, you know, I took a break from graffiti for a while, and then when I got back into it, you know, that was probably like the first time that I had really like gotten real wild with it. I lived in Orlando for a while, and I was painting out there, but
so that's how the Orlando, because I've seen another news report where it was like they're coming all the way up to Orlando and stuff.
Well,
like that.
I think what you're talking about, if I remember correctly, is when Chrome went to Disney and like was putting stickers on shit, and the cops found those stickers. So when we got arrested, they were like, they're even putting graffiti on the rides at Disney World. And all those kinds of things stick in people's mind and they inflate the truth in people's minds. Yeah. It's weird because if you ask me, it's like, yeah, we did a little bit of graffiti for a couple months and it was like not that big of a deal. But when it gets on the fucking news and people have these little personal connections that they remember, or they remember sitting in their living room with their mom, with their family. I mean, we were in people's living rooms. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like we were in the living room. Like you were sitting on the couch with your family. It was different than looking at your phone or even on the computer and stuff. This was different. This was like back when you had the TV on in your living room while the whole family's there eating dinner and stuff. And we were on every single channel because when the police came in, they held me in the apartment until all the news got there, so that when they did I mean, how the fuck you think if they would have came in and arrested me, took 10 minutes, 15 minutes to arrest me, go take me out, there wouldn't have been no news there.
Yeah.
But they were like, that was their tactic. They were like, well, we don't have a case against them because we did everything illegal. So let's just convict them in the court of public opinion, hit them with a ridiculous bond, and make them plea out to get out of this shit.
So was the news reports about you guys happening a little bit beforehand, or this was when it all just went down? It was built up?
It built up. It started off as Channel 10 did a story about graffiti on the rise. And they put something that me and him did as a little bubble on the screen, you know, like graffiti on the rise and a picture of our shit. And then when they did the story, they showed a lot of graffiti, but ours was kind of like shined a little bit more. We got more shine in that. It was obvious that like we were causing some of this attention that they were putting, but they didn't name no names. We just were like, oh shit, we got on the news.
Yeah.
You seen it, my crook right there in front of fucking Dwight Lauderdale or whoever the fuck it was. And that was cool and not scary, and that was fun. And then a couple weeks later, I don't remember the exact timeline, Channel 10 did the story. Who is Crook Chrome? And it was exactly, who is Crook Chrome? What the fuck is this Crook Chrome all over the place? It's all over the place, and especially for people who worked at Channel 10, because we were 15 blocks down the street, you know? So, you know, to them, it was like, they were like, this was their own story. This was a Channel 10 story. It wasn't like the whole town was buzzing. This might have been like one reporter who just was like, you guys see all this? We should do a story. One person was like, let's do this story about who is Crook and Chrome. I remember motherfucking Oprah Winfrey at 4 o'clock on Channel 10, and then at the commercials being like, next at 5 o'clock, Crook Chrome. Who is Crook Chrome? The spraying graffiti bandit all over. You know, it's like crazy. Like you're the commercial right after fucking Oprah Winfrey and shit, you know, and like this is hyping people up for 5 o'clock news. So we knew it was.
Now were you like watching?
We
TV
knew it was coming. Yeah, people were like, "Yo, you on the news, son? You better get to a TV," you know. So when they did that story, it was so crazy. We were in Chrome's bedroom on 25th and Biscayne. We're facing south. The TV's here. There's 2 windows. We're sitting on his bed and we're watching this shit. And when they finally go live, we're like, they're 2 blocks down the street on the corner. You could look out the window and see the antenna of the mobile van that was right there.
Wait, hold on. So they went live before they went and caught you guys?
They went live broadcast from the corner of Biscayne and 20, whatever the fuck it was, standing in front of a palm tree that had a big crook tag on it, doing their story about who is Crook Chrome. And we watched the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
We're watching it live.
So this isn't the day that they busted in?
No. We're chilling in Chrome's bedroom, and literally you could look out the window and be like the camera was pointing the same way our eyes were looking. They're standing on the corner, and we could see the fucking antenna of the thing sticking up in the air. So we're like, holy shit, they're doing a Who is Crook and Chrome 2 blocks away. So as soon as the story ended, we ran downstairs, got him our homie's car, my boy Bane, and we drove over there, and he hopped out of the car and was like, yo, these are artists. Why you guys trying to make them look like criminals? And, you know, that story was nuts. These are like college kids or whatever the fuck he said. And, you know, trying to reason with like some reporter dude that's like probably didn't know what the fuck he was talking about, you know. They're just like, Chrome, what the fuck is this shit? It's all over the place, you know. And that was crazy. So that was like when we knew that, like, oh shit, you know. Now it's like, it's not just a graffiti on the rise with our pictures and we're all happy. Now it's like, ugh, like I'm fucking shook. Like, they're looking for us. Yeah. And we're 2 blocks away.
It's no longer like, oh, this is so cool.
It's not like, oh, they did a story somewhere and we're way the fuck over here. We're like, oh, we can see these motherfuckers. They can look and see us, bro. Like, pretty crazy, you know, right on 25th and Biscayne, you know, pretty hot spot. And so we knew, like, oh, boy. And then you know what we did after that? The biggest wall that we ever did, that big blockbuster right on the highway.
The RC Cola.
And that's why that basic ass, boring, black and white, block letter, no style, didn't even come out exactly the way we wanted to, was so impactful, because it was like, that's like saying like, oh, we got a serial killer on the loose. He's this guy. And then here's video of him fucking murdering someone after you did the story. Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, that's basically what we did. It was like, oh, you looking for us? Bomb, bitch! Here we are, you know? Like, on a spot that every graffiti writer knew about and was maybe up on a little scribble. Because it was just like a primetime wall. Especially if you were from, like... right there. If you went down to South Beach, on your way back, that was like, you didn't miss that. You looked over to the right, and it was like, oh, shit. That's
like the only opening on the side of 95.
I'm saying it was a block-long wall, and it had a mural on it. It had a mural on it, old murals called Yammy, I Love Miami. And it was like an abstract kind of, Art Deco shit that came out in like scenes in Miami Vice and stuff, but it was all faded and chipped and fucked up. So graffiti writers started to do their thing and put little mosquito bites on it. So, it was all Chrome's idea to go there and be like, let's just buff the whole thing with white paint. No one will say anything because they'll think we're just painting it. And then real quickly, we'll just drop all the lines, only have to stick our neck out for a couple minutes. And we even did the names backwards so it wouldn't be fully readable until we were like basically done, and it was just like a hell of a, it was like, that's what escalated it from like, who is Crook and Chrome? Who knows? Maybe they would have just, if we would have just chilled out and maybe went somewhere else, kind of laid low for a while, maybe it would have just like went away and we could have faded into the overall graffiti scene and not stood out like that. But we did the opposite. We fucking poured gas on that shit, And that's because me and him, basically, we had done so much low-level stuff, getting our name out there, that we were kind of done with that. We were like moving on to these like bigger ideas, like that wall. That was like one of the first ones, but we had other ideas. I mean, we were going to paint bridges, and we had like, he had a lot of crazy ideas and I was down for all of them. So it was going to go down. But before we could really get into that phase of it where we would do less quantity and more quality, because we had already saturated shit, that now the way to add to it is by putting some quality out there. Because now if we did it, you already, that's Crook and Chrome. We didn't have to like establish that name, and we had kind of like run our course with like that, just like crackhead style of getting up everywhere, and now we're starting to get attention from the news and stuff, and it's becoming a bigger deal, and also buzzing on the streets. Who's Crook and Chrome, good and bad. Like, who's Crook and Chrome? I want to go fuck those niggas up. Or like, who's Crook and Chrome? They're killing shit, for everything in between. When you start buzzing like that, it's different. Now it's like, maybe you would go viral if you did something. That would be like oh shit, I posted that video and that shit got 1 million views today.
It's like viral,
LeBron
but even
reposted me. Like, back then that was like, I guess what you would call
it's
going
viral
viral.
shit, but even bigger because this is your only source
exactly
of media.
Like,
at that time.
there could be a video going wild on the internet that I just completely missed because I didn't fuck with my phone for a couple of days. I don't follow that. I missed it. There's a whole thing that everyone's doing this, and I don't know nothing about it. You know?
This is your main source of
media. But back then, it was
now,
like, if you were in the newspaper, on the fucking radio, and you're on television, it's kind of hard to ignore that.
I remember seeing something about like special unit, like gang unit or something like that. They made like a whole enforcement group coming for you guys or something like that.
Well, graffiti used to be policed by gang unit, so.
But if I remember correctly, though, it was kind of like they made it seem like they made the gang unit start going for graffiti specifically because of you guys.
I wouldn't say so. I think that it's easy for people to think that because our shit was so public, but there was situations prior to Crook and Chrome and after where writers were getting their house raided and getting caught in the street, getting their ass whooped and stuff. I mean, a graffiti crew and a gang, there's some graffiti crews and writers that kind of are in both worlds.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of graffiti writers that are not. And MSG is like a are not kind of thing. It's more like artists. And I mean, we got our dudes that, are in that world.
Yeah, it's just that's not what it
but
was.
But it's not. There's some crews that that's their whole shit. You know what I'm saying? And that was like never really us. But graffiti was, like I said, was policed by gang unit. Gang unit was the one that would look into and arrest and harass graffiti writers, which is kind of strange. It's kind of like a wasted resource. Like,
so it wasn't specified to you guys. Then.
Not that I know of. I've never heard of anything like that.
Growing up, based off of what I had seen, right, and able to piece together, they made it seem like this was like a, first launch to all of this, and this is because
it wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense because, I mean, look at what happened with us. We were running wild with zero resistance, and then the news sparked this backlash that the City of Miami Police Department put their detectives on, and they were able to find us right away. But instead of doing it by the book, they did it probably the way they do a lot of things. Just kind of don't really ask for permission, kind of fudge the lines later and figure it out. Or maybe with us, it was just like, that's a good way to like put it to rest. You know, you arrest them, get them off the street, make them deal with the legal system, and they get arrested, or if they don't, or what, I mean, if they get convicted or whatever, then, you know, great for them. But at the end of the day, the police basically, Crook and Chrome stopped because we got arrested. I was in jail, he was in jail, you know, our faces and names all over TV and stuff. So mission accomplished with stopping the thing that was probably embarrassing them, and getting pressure from Department of Transportation, City of Miami. Like, they can't have graffiti writers going as crazy as us like that where you can pinpoint it. It's different when it's like, graffiti is a problem. There's a bunch of graffiti writers doing graffiti all over the place. How do you stop that? Kind of can't. But if it's like, well, if we could just stop these guys, we can make an example of them to scare everyone else. Because these guys are the ones right now that are fucking causing the problems, you know, and bringing the heat to these other organizations, you know. I mean, Department of Transportation, it's a pain in the ass for them to clean those highway signs. You got to shut down lanes of traffic and get a man up there, and it's a lot, you know what I'm saying? I mean, to a graffiti writer, it seems like a joke. It's like, bro, I climb up the side and be up there and clean shit. It costs us $50. It's gonna cost. We say it costs $10,000 to clean that sign. What the fuck you talking about, bro? Like, I went up there with $10 worth of spray paint and did that shit. Like, but you know, that's why they gave us felonies, because it was felony vandalism. You know, because they cost so much to fix it. They say replace it, but all they do is they just clean it off of the. You know what I'm saying? So. But, you know, it was all sensationalized, and they didn't do anything by the books, and that's why we got away with everything.
How long would you say it did stop you guys, though? Because, all right, so I
was in jail for 6.5 months.
Okay.
And then when I got out, I wasn't really, like, doing graffiti. I was pretty scared of it. And when I got out, the case was still pending. You know, I had moved up to Orlando by the time the case finally got dismissed. We put in a motion to suppress evidence before we even got to a trial. We proved that they illegally searched our apartment, violated our Fourth Amendment rights against illegal searches and seizures. We proved that in court, and all the evidence that they gathered from the apartment, they couldn't use. So basically, they were bringing forth a case against us, but they had no evidence. So in the court of law, it's like, you know, you have all this circumstantial evidence, and you got a mountain of that, but you didn't do your job correct to make sure that your case will stick. So like you accomplished the goal of making us stop doing graffiti, but you didn't, like, you left the city of Miami on the hook to pay for everything, and didn't hold anyone accountable, and we got to walk scot-free, basically, even though we got arrested and we had to pay for lawyers and we had to, you know, do all this shit, and I was in jail.
If I remember correctly, though, too, I mean, I could be wrong on this part, but I remember between the news part and I think it was you posting on Instagram a few years ago or something like that, where it was on the news report, it was they found you guys because there was an MSG flag hanging outside of the apartment.
I'll tell you a story with that. I mean, there's a whole story to that, and that's like where what you see on the news or on the internet, you see a picture of something, it only tells you one little snapshot. The real true story behind it is it usually doesn't even matter. You know what I'm saying? Like, what matters is the story that gets told and everyone believes. So a lot of people think, yeah, you guys had a fucking MSG banner flying. You think we had a fucking MSG banner flying off our shit? Of course not. What we did was, I'll tell you the exact story. We were at a Publix, and they had this like banner outside for a sale of whatever. And I took it and went on the balcony and painted an MSG going down, because we were hanging at Bobby Maduro, the baseball stadium in Alapata that was abandoned, where you can go and paint and shit. And prior to that, I climbed up the the outfield lights, like this tower. I climbed all the way to the top of it, and you can see all of Miami. It's like super dope view, and it was about 3 blocks. It's on 10th Ave. So it's like 3 blocks from I-95. So I had this idea in my head that like, I'm going to climb up there and I'm going to hang this banner from the top of this light. So you'll be able to see this shit from all over the place. I painted it bright yellow with a big black MSG going down. And I was like, you'll be able to see this shit from I-95. You'll be able to see this from 7th Ave. Like, this is crazy, like, so I was going to go hang it up there. It was just laying on the ground on the balcony. So the cops came and the cops hung it up, and I have video of the cops doing it because one of the news crews was just getting like B-roll footage, and the cop has like that packing tape, like tape thing in his hand, like putting it on there. There's video of the cops, like I have that video, like I can show you that like they took it and they put it there, and then they just told the news, yeah, they had the MSG banner hanging. Oh, no, we didn't. We didn't have the motherfucking MSG banner hanging off our balcony. We're not that fucking retarded. But that's how, when things go into the news, whatever's said on the news, that's what people believe and remember. So, it's just a funny little story. It's funny how people interpret it and remember it, but there's always like, the truth. And if you can get to the source, you can. And that's the fun thing about graffiti, is meeting the different writers and hearing these different stories and hearing it from them directly, because in graffiti, especially back then, there's a lot of rumors and this and that, and da 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 da, So when you met graffiti writers back then, and you're like, okay, now the mask is off. You connect the name with the face and the personality, and you start to talk to them, and this person tells their stories and your story. You start to connect things, you start to figure things out, and it's just funny how it's like a game of telephone. People hear things and remember things differently, especially now. I mean, that shit was 1999. That was 24 years ago.
Yeah, so it's crazy to me to hear this stuff because
long time ago.
Me, I was getting into this stuff like 2007.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just coming from someone like.
Well, I mean, this is it's just like anything else. Like if you were a rapper right now and you were getting into it, or a rapper at that time, you might not know who the fuck Grandmaster Flash is, or Kool Herc, or Rakim. Maybe if you kind of grew up in a different era, maybe you like J. Cole, and you know what I'm saying? Like, you might just be on some different shit. So, you hear about the legends and the stories of the past and stuff. So, it makes sense. Like, if you're not from that era and your version of it is through other people's interpretations and saying, oh, that Crook shit, that shit was crazy. People telling you about it, that they were actually there. And, it's kind of like built up in people's minds based on things that are not all based on reality.
Yeah.
The reality of it, I don't think, is as impressive. What's impressive is the attention that we got for something that like has been done before and after, and has never quite got the same kind of attention down here ever, so it's weird, it's strange.
And then, so going back to the wall off 95, the RC Cola wall, let's call it that. Do you think that brought a lot of attention to Wynwood itself, being that you guys kind of highlighted that in a prime era that Crook and Chrome was wanted?
That's like another example of how Wynwood was being targeted because of its proximity to the highway, So I'm not going to say that, like we set that off. We set it off in other ways. I mean, that's what would stand out maybe in your mind, because it was in the newspaper, it was on the news, it was Front Street. But if you really want to, and a graffiti writer might tell you that MSG had more of an impact in Wynwood when we painted with Damon Lumet from Germany for the first time. These guys came into town and they brought fancy paint that wasn't even sold over here, and they were on another level. So Chrome and Hest painted with Damon Lumet, and they did this chessboard piece, and it was just really cool. Like, it's a really the colors that they use and the techniques and the way the wall was done would just be like another wall in today's Wynwood, but back then It was like if you stumbled into that neighborhood, which was not a place where people hung out and wanted to be back then, and you came across that wall, you'd have been like, "Oh shit! Like it's an oasis in the desert here. Like this, where this is. Oh wow! Like I stumbled upon this dope ass mural that most people might have saw like in a magazine or on that website Art Crimes or something, but it was actually painted. I mean, right now it's like Toe Jam backlot, I think, was where that wall was painted, which, you know, there's probably a huge mural on that right now in every building around that corner. But back then, that was like, whew, I don't even know. I think it was 90s. I think it was late 90s when they painted that. So like that, to me, that's more impactful and more important than to what Wynwood became, rather than us just slapping blockbusters across that front wall. Um, what attracted people to Wynwood was the fact that it was a grimy area filled with buildings that if you knew how to just go talk to them, they would give the spots up. And there's a lot of writers that's the avenue, that's the lane that they chose, permission. So especially if you're a really dope artist, you don't want to be rushing and worrying about getting arrested. This is somewhere where you might want to just go and talk to a business owner and say, hey, can we paint this out of your business, and take their time and flex on something that everyone back then, the way we talk about social media, the information superhighway, back then it literally was the highway.
Yeah.
The highest views that you would receive, where like now, like I can go do something in the real world and X amount of people will see it, but I can press a couple buttons on my phone and that photo could be shared across the globe and could potentially be massive. So back then, for us to get that kind of audience, you wanted to be where the most traffic was. And back then, the highway was the goal, because the most people would see it. You could be one block off the highway and no one would see it unless the locals that are going over there. But if I'm up on that wall, that RC Cola wall, every motherfucker that left South Beach on their way north, they're driving past that
Even
shit
going
and they're
south.
breaking neck and they're looking at it and they're remembering that shit. And the names that were up on that wall might be the only name that, like, yo, I went down to Miami, bro, I seen you up. Yeah, you saw me up because I'm on that motherfucking wall. I'm not anywhere else, but I'm there. So you see that, you say, oh, you're all over the place, man. I seen you when I left Miami,
So you don't think that like mainstreamed it a bit, or because it was already a
Well,
thing in the
what
graffiti world?
happened with that wall, it kind of did in a way, because that wall was, and still is, doesn't have the same kind of value that it used to have, because now the whole neighborhood is painted.
But you
But
still
back,
see it
I'm
directly
saying
off
it's
the
still
highway.
the most prime wall, especially when the bushes are cut the right way. It really still stands out. But what happened with that one was that we painted it. We were the ones to flip it from the old mural with a bunch of shitty graffiti on top of it and take the whole thing and do something, even though what we did was real basic. And
Yeah, but you took over the entire wall.
we took it. We flipped it. We took the wall. We took it. We gave it to ourselves. And then after that, a series of artists and different things happened. Like the Fast and the Furious movie that was filmed in Miami, the first one, like that wall was painted for the movie. It only came out for like 2 seconds when they literally fly by. So you don't really, but like that wall over the years got sponsored by, like Altoid sponsored it one year and everyone painted, and Altoid's paint spray paid for the paint. Fast and the Furious, everyone painted for that. And then over the years, when Primary Flight, my boy Chris O, they started Primary Flight, the outdoor mural fest for Basel, rather than the indoor stuff. That was like one of the prime locations where like you can go out to this area and see street art and graffiti here, and here's a map telling you who they are, and like it's an organized thing. So that wall has always been, like, to me, like ground zero of graffiti in that area. But what we did is just part of a long story of it, and what we did doesn't deserve any like fantastic praise. It's just, yeah, all right, other graffiti writers hit it. We were the first ones to just be like, all right, fuck this whole wall, we're taking the whole thing. But then it just happened over and over and over, and still to this day, I mean, it gets painted. It used to be like every single year, but now that there's so much going on,
Yeah,
sometimes
there's
those things
always.
on that wall don't get flipped up for a while. So it's kind of lost its value a little because the area is so saturated. But for many years, that wall was the wall, even before Wynwood became the Arch District like it did. And then for many years, that was the prime time wall. We got repainted every year for Basel, and it would even put people next to each other that maybe weren't even on best of terms. You know, this crew would be over here, and they would mind their business and do their thing, and we'd be over here, and these guys are here, and everyone would kind of give each other their space. And then at the end, there'd be this like, holy shit, this whole building, if you walk around all these walls, you're seeing the best representatives in South Florida, all the Miami crews. And it's a local thing. It's for
Yeah.
the locals. Not too many out-of-towners got to be on that wall. And if they did, or if they did advertisement shit, like, people would just go over it. You know, the shit that lasted was the locals who could defend it and maintain it and whoop your ass if you fucked with it, you know? Where
Yeah.
out of town, or you come and you paint, you go back to wherever you're from, paint over your shit, and you're like, you see it on the internet, like, huh, what are you
Yeah.
gonna do? You can fly back to Miami and fix your wall? Nah, we took it already. It's gone. You
Yeah.
know, you had your fun. We let you have it for a weekend, and now it's ours again. You know?
So so going back to like just like in general how everything went into formation with MSG and stuff, because like as a kid I used to follow the MSG cartel blog
Yeah.
spot and
I
stuff
was the
like that.
one mostly running that. There was some more people in with it.
So like what year did that start, and like the influence of just how everything has
I think
changed
that
within all this?
2009 we got on the New Times, they gave us like blog of the year, like hip hop blog or art blog or something. We got some best of Miami shit. I remember because we painted the little ribbon that they put. We painted it on a wall and put best of Miami MSG crew. Um, so yeah, that's a different era. You know, that's kind of like the resurgence of MSG, where like MSG was started and it rose, and then when we lost Bino, it was like a lot of fallout from that, and then started to build back up. And I came along, and then there was the Crook and Chrome, and then there was like the fallout from that, and then there's, we lost another member. Siege passed away. That was a huge blow. He's a style master and really like one of the best members of the crew. And a lot of things were happening. The crew was kind of falling off, and a couple members were holding it together and keeping it alive. And then, um, you know, Quake and Atomic met Doper and other members of the crew, and they had got along well and painted together. And at some point in time, they just kind of agreed to like join forces with MSG and kind of put their own crew to the side. And a lot more recruiting over the years because Quake and Atomic coming to the crew was a big deal. It had some bad implications and it had some really good ones, you know. Um, and that's just the way things are in graffiti. It's never just one thing. It's never all bad or all good. You're gonna have to deal with both of it. So what you're talking about, when the blog spot was out and we were really crushing it, that was, when Quake and Atomic and a couple other guys came in, and a whole new energy came, and some of the old guys were brought back to life, like that were kind of like out of it, and some of the new guys were joining, and we were becoming this, like, we were reestablishing ourselves as one of the best crews in the city, where we kind of fell off for a little while. And then Why Not passed away. And then we had that next big drop, where it fucked a lot of people up. There's a lot of people, close people that were involved in that directly and people that were affected by his loss. And it changed us, changed everything. And, kind of goes in that wave, kind of went down, and then there's another resurgence, and that might be more of the MSG crew Instagram, where you're kind of going into the blog spot's not happening no more. Now it's Instagram, and we got people coming from all over the place, and we even have like a girl in the crew now, like things are just different. But that resurgence, that era that you're talking about, was really Quake and Atomic were the ones that came over and breathed new life. And Quake probably didn't know it at the time, but he was emerging as the leader of the crew without anyone ever choosing him or him ever wanting that, just by virtue of his character. He just kind of got put in that position. Even though the other people been around longer and maybe more important, he was the most consistent and really suited for that role of like the unofficial leader of the crew. And he's been in that position now for a long time, you know. And that's what Cushy is. Cushy is the legal aspect of that, so that we can have something real besides just like a at MSG crew on Instagram, and like we're this loose thing that isn't actually organized. You know, he started Cushy Gigs 12 years ago, and these guys are painting murals now for a living on a regular basis. A lot of artists in the crew have gone from working 9 to 5s and doing art on the side to full-blown artists that are absolutely killing it. You know, shout out to Abstract and Suarez, and just so many people in the crew that have taken it to, you know, a really high level. Atomic, a lot of other people who, you know, back when it was the pizza and beer days, you know, weren't making this kind of money and having these kind of opportunities, but they put in work for mad years. And, you know, so we have Cushy, and then everyone has everyone is kind of like their own graffiti writers now. Everyone's like a brand almost, yeah. You know, like their own company, if they pursue it that way. Not everyone chooses to participate that way, but the ones that are trying to monetize it, the opportunities out there are really good, especially for the really talented, really driven ones, that are social media savvy. They can really, you know, I've seen a lot of my friends really blossom into really dope careers, you know, seeing them raise their quality of life, you know, with graffiti. You know, it'd have been hard to like understand a lot of that stuff 25 years ago, you know. But the one thing about MSG that always enticed me, that always was intriguing to me, was that there was very much a business aspect to it, and it wasn't all just fun and dandy. You know, Chrome was a hustler and learned from his dad, and they had that sign hustle, and he was the first kind of like, you know, little ghetto entrepreneur that I knew, besides like people selling drugs. You know, this dude was like, didn't have a job, and would just, everywhere he went, would just talk to people. If he saw an opportunity, like, hey man, this place needs to get painted, or your sign's all fucked up, can we get a new sign for you? Or he just hustled word of mouth as he went around, and people, you know, I was doing jobs with him and stuff, just like painting murals, painting buildings white, you know, doing not fast food, but like convenience store signs, just whatever, you know. And if we went into a convenience store, he'd be like, hey, what's up, man? Your sign looking raggedy out there. Talk to him real quick. Yo, 150, I'll hook you up with this and that. Go back to his house, cut the shit out on some vinyl, go and apply it. Like, he was the first person showing me that, like, you don't have to go down to like Publix and like get a job application and work for some corporate shit and like work on their schedule. That you could, if you got the right team and you got the skills and you know how to do it, you can go hustle for yourself, you know. Yeah. I had no idea really how to do all that, but he was the one that kind of opened my eyes to it, that MSG and graffiti is cool and fun, but there's another aspect to it. And I always had that vision, not that I had the vision to do it, but I always saw that MSG was going to be like that there would be like this, what now today I would say Cushy Gigs, you know, like, it's kind of an example of what I was thinking, you know. And a lot of other people in the crew have kind of developed their own lanes very similar to that I saw back in the days, that I knew that this wasn't just like a bunch of dudes spray painting for fun. And like, this is
bigger picture.
There's a big picture. There's a lot of money behind this, a lot of opportunity. And so, you know, I always kind of saw that. Chrome showed me that early on, you know. So the fact that Cushy exists, you know, I wish that Chrome would have kind of followed his dream all the way through and kind of achieved some of those things. But there's other people in the crew that, you know, are really great examples of that, you know. And Quake is the one that, you know, I work with 12 years now. And, you know, it's just amazing. Sometimes we find ourselves in situations where, like, I can't believe we're fucking doing this, you know, getting paid thousands of dollars to do some shit that's like, kind of corny, but it's like, yo, they're paying, bro. This is hot, like, fuck it, you know. And the people get an authentic experience hanging out with Quake and Crook of MSG crew, doing these paint parties and stuff, you know. It's wild. And he's got a museum of graffiti in fucking Wynwood. You know, these are things that are just still, when I actually think about it, it's like, that's kind of crazy. You know?
Yeah, it's a whole.
It's not crazy.
180.
It's normal now. But if you actually think about where
No,
it came from,
for and what you did to get, what you did to get things to this point without even like trying to get things to this point.
When it comes to the Crook and Chrome shit, it really shines a light on the attitude towards graffiti. They were trying to stop it. It was a problem. But it's like, I always tell people the same analogy. Like, if you was in a neighborhood and you seen kids in the street playing stickball every day, damn near getting hit by cars, ball hitting shit and causing a problem, what are you going to do? You're going to go build a fucking baseball field for them and organize some shit and get these kids who have all this energy and put it into something positive. You know, you put a basketball court, you put a baseball field, you do these things, you know. Graffiti was obviously something that is a big part of South Florida. I think because so many people come from New York and migrate down here. So those cultures that were built up there in those cities, they brought those down here. And those kids that were like from New York in the 80s and 90s that had all this flavor from being in the city in Chicago, Philly, wherever, where it was more prevalent, they came down here and had huge influences on the people down here, you know? So I think that's why graffiti was like such a big thing in Miami, because so many people not from Miami, especially from New York, the home of where graffiti was fucking born and where the culture started. So, you know, you bring a dude who has a New York mentality down to a slow ass city like Miami, and, you know, he can set off a wildfire. So I think that's where, you know, graffiti's influence in Miami is from all those people from other areas.
But all right, guys, that was our first interview over here with the legend Crook MSG. Let us know what you guys think in the comments and stuff like that. We could get more rolling. But yeah, I mean, we got a good guideline as to how a lot of this stuff started, and our first interview with someone besides the music scene. But this is like some like real legend shit here. So
and if
pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, man. I've been wanting to do this. I like what you do. I fuck with it. You know, I support it. I know how hard this shit is because, you know, we've done it. If you want to check out work from the crew on Instagram at MSG Crew, you can scroll through there and see examples of everybody in the crew. Don't really update it as much as we should, but we've put tons of shit on there. So,
yeah, I mean,
if
decades of shit is on there.
Yeah, if you want to check that out, and if you want to work with us, you can go to cushygigs.com. At Cushy Gigs on Instagram, and we can work together.
All right,
that's a wrap.